Okay, you can box up those two pillows and send those to me now, if you would, please.
I know I got a bit quite cool, aren't they? So,
Oh, I love the one on the far right with the dice on it. That is just so cool.
hello and welcome to Board Game Bonkers. I'm JC, and this is Under the Meeple Lights. And today we have a special guest who is a new game designer in the industry, but has been around for quite a while. That's Jeff Irving. Welcome, Jeff.
Thank you, Jay.
Thanks so much for joining us. Why don't you tell everyone a little bit about yourself?
Well, again, Jeff Irving. I am the owner of Weathervane Games, which is a very small company in rural Montana, United States, that I created to house the game system project and others that are to follow. But it's a it's a tiny studio, basically run by me, and then I partner obviously with writers and artists around the world to first and foremost deliver the Vrahode game system to fans, and then we'll go from there. We have some other things slated already, but Vrahode is definitely the the entree, right?
Yeah, and yeah, so do you want to tell everyone a little bit more about that and maybe they can check that out?
Yeah, if you go to vrahode.com, you can see kind of what's going on with that current project. This is a fantasy board game series that consists of a core box and three expansions. That it offers a lot of modes of play. It's got kind of an interactive novel approach. If you prefer campaigns, long story-driven campaigns, uh, down to quest chains, more single quests, skirmishes, and even procedural play. The system is based around the world of Vrahode, which I came up with in 1990. So I was a young college student in Indiana, and I began to I had a passion for sociology and anthropology, and so I began to kind of create these fantasy races and look at their lives, how they interacted, their descent patterns, their birth rituals, their all the rituals and things that go along with cultures, and just kind of fell in love with the world. And this game is kind of the outpouring of all of that interest, if you will.
Fantastic. So we'll put any links in the description down below so people can check that out. So if
Great.
you're new to this show, let me just explain that this is a Q&A, it's not a quiz. And it's a Q&A with a twist. And that twist is that our guest has no idea what the questions will be as we present 10 questions. However, they are now going to be drawn from this bowl. So we're going to draw 10 of these questions, and we have no idea which questions will be coming out. So, well, I guess 5 and the Meeple Lights are. Will Jeff be a little bit nervous? But we'll wait to find out as we bring out 10 questions, present them to a guest. So, Jeff,
Are there zingers in there, Jay? Are there zingers? I mean, are there like really tough ones?
there actually, a, a few people have asked, actually, there's a few, let's say, about 25 fluffy questions. Started off with 120, and a
Uh-huh.
few tough ones have come out already. So you might be quite lucky. You might get a few fluffy ones. So you might,
Okay.
yeah. So we'll see how we
You're not
go.
going to ask me about you're not going to ask me about cross-dressing or anything, are you?
No, you're safe. It's
Okay, good.
that deep. I haven't gone that deep. We'll keep it secret. Let's bring out.
Okay. Be kind to me, Jay. Be kind.
So this is quite an interesting one. So what companies come to mind when you think of the board game industry, and what do they do well in?
What do they do well? Well, I think it's a mix. I think when I think of board game companies, I think there's a mix of big companies and small companies that I think do things well. I mean, obviously, CMON is extraordinarily successful. Steamforged Games does things well, and in many fans' opinions, not so well. If I had to pick a small company that I think has done something well from the very beginning, I have to say Probably Shadowborn games. And that's Jamie Jolly, the creator of Oathsworn. And so for a small British company, actually they're located in Florida, so technically they're a U.S. company, but the brain trust of Shadowborn Games comes from Jamie Jolly in the UK. And if you look at Jamie's track record as a philanthropist, as a volunteer, as just a good human being, I think he's done a wonderful job, and he's put his heart and soul into this first IP that he's released, Oathsworn. And there's not many people in the gaming industry that I think can ignore Jamie. I think he's made a mark with his first title. And all I can say is I can't wait to see what else he has up his sleeve because he's way smarter than I am. So, what do you know who Jamie is, don't you, Jay?
Yeah, he's done extremely well, and certainly Osborne's been successful as well. And there's been a lot of positive feedback in the direction that's gone in. So, yeah, and it'll be interesting to see what else comes out in the future.
I know that they're thinking about on the horizon some sort of area control game next. That's all I can say because I don't want to create any spoilers for Jamie. I'll let him spill the beans on that one. Other game companies. I have to say, Restoration Games is one that you probably wouldn't expect me to give you, but I happen to be a lover of restoration. I love to see things that were made. Maybe they were made perfect the first time, maybe they weren't. But a company that can go back and look at these um, maybe diamonds in the rough and bring them up to modern standards, like what they did with Return to Dark Tower. I think those are to be commended. Those efforts. Fireball Island. I think they're working on crossbows and catapults currently. Um, but I like to see old things made new, and so I have to say Restoration Games would rank up there for me for sure as well. Do you
Yeah,
want more?
yeah, they've done really well, and they've certainly got their niche market.
Mm.
So they've been successful what they've achieved. That's great, and yeah, it'll be interesting to see what others think about what smaller companies have done great, and perhaps some other people have got their opinions as well on really successful small games. I'm sure Stone Myers games would probably come to the forefront of some people's
Oh,
minds.
certainly.
So there's quite a few small companies that have done extremely well. And let's hope not too many get swamped up by these larger companies and they can grow strong themselves. So time will.
Absolutely. I think Orange Nebula is another company worthy of note. I think what they did with Unsettled in creating this kind of fun, tongue-in-cheek, a little bit space exploration game. They have a fantasy title coming called Spirit Fire. I don't know if you've heard anything about Spirit Fire. It's just been teased a little bit by them, but I think they're going to take the same approach with Spirit Fire as they did with Unsettled, where you buy the core box and then you have planetary explorations. But in Spirit Fire, I think what you'll get is the core box, the core mechanics, and then you'll be buying kingdoms that you can then explore and adventure in. And I'm really intrigued by that kind of it's a high box count. You end up with stacks of little boxes, but each box actually may even have its own kind of rule augmentations so that kingdoms play subtly differently from one another. And I think it's a really kind of modern thought process to board gaming, is that you know every box is a little bit of a different rule set. So
Yes, it'll be interesting to see where that goes. So
yeah,
let's go on to our second question.
drum
So
roll.
that was shuffled. There we go. So number two. So what do you think the most challenging game concept or material is to make? So you should obviously know quite a lot about that now. You've dug your fingers into the first game about to be released. And keeping in mind the current global shortages and prices, what do you think the biggest challenge is in terms of perhaps types of materials or how games are made, and what the challenge might be for game designers or publishers?
Well, I think that the biggest enemy is always going to be weight. And then you have subtle differences in materials pricing. Plastics have always, I feel like plastics for what they deliver to a gaming experience are on the economical end. I feel plastics tend to be, um, once you absorb the mold costs, obviously to be able to injection mold these pieces, which is prohibitive if you go overboard with it. But once you bite the bullet on the mold costs, then the plastics tend to be a really. I, I just I got to be honest with you. I'm just not a fan of meeples. I prefer miniatures. I like the detail. I like the paintability of miniatures, even though I don't paint often myself. Um, so to me, it's more about just the weight and our product, the Vrahode game system. It breaks a lot of rules. It's the box sizes for our games are 18 and a quarter by 18 and a quarter by X. In other words, the height varies based on the amount of contents in that larger square 18 and a quarter inch profile. And much to many people's chagrin that have Kallax shelving, I guess. But my desire to create the games that I always wanted to play dictated that the box size had to answer to the play experience, in my opinion. I wanted 18-inch encounter maps that basically were kind of a mini board for the board game, and I wasn't willing to compromise. I wasn't willing to go down to 1 foot maps, either for overland encounters or for underland encounters in the Vrahode game system. So our boxes are large. They're large. If you have Kallax shelving, you would probably prefer to have our games stacked on top or next to your shelving. But I'm not going to make a game that fits into your shelf. I'm going to make the game that I want to play, and hopefully you're willing to say, hey, not all games fit into the same hole, and that's okay, you know? But to your question about concerns about shipping and things like that is we have to be creative in how we ship the Vrahode game system to clients without it getting cost prohibitive. And you have to be creative. And so in other words, like we're gonna put our boxes up on end for palletize them. That gives us that lower footprint on the skid itself, and then we're shrink wrapping all of those boxes vertically, where almost every other game is horizontally. So we have to think outside the box in order to deliver the product in an economical way, but still create, produce, and deliver the product that we think is the ultimate game experience.
Yeah, certainly molds, for those who don't know, as molds are very expensive initially to get molds that completed because it costs a good few thousand up front to get molds produced, but thereafter the cost reduces significantly because the molds are being made. And certainly you hit it on the nail as well with shipping, which can be at one point it was extortionate through the roof. And it still is expensive. So you're right, you have to be more creative and looking at various different ways in how you can ship that game out to your customers. So it'll be interesting
Yeah.
to see in the future when the shipping comes down. So let's move on to question 3 then, and let's see what comes out. So
Great.
fluffy questions yet, but there might be some flying down there. So let's see what I've got here.
I don't even know what a fluffy question is yet. I've enjoyed the first ones, though. I know that.
So, oh, this is an interesting one. It might be a little bit controversial, but
Okay.
so what are your thoughts on Game Found competing with Kickstarter?
You're going to get a real simple, straightforward answer from me on this. Um, I am a consummate capitalist. I believe that markets will support things. I think competition is always good for markets. And I say bring on 10 more game founds and bring on more competition. It's to me, it's about just the basic market-based economies, and we should not mess with them. We should allow companies to come into that and compete, drive the price down, increase the supply. That way, the demand has more choices of places to go. I mean, to me, it's a very, very simple math equation. And I love GameFound. I love BackerKit. I love Kickstarter. I love all of them. Are any of them perfect? No. But are they all trying their best to provide new services, new wrinkles, nuancing their products ways? Yes. And I think if I could point out who do I think is most innovative, well, it's GameFound, simply because they've looked at the Kickstarter model and they've said, how can we improve upon this? But I don't think Kickstarter will stand by and allow innovation to happen without them answering it. And I think you have to give them some props for being the first, the original, the one that changed in and of themselves. They changed the board game industry. They allowed people like me to exist in this space. And so I'm always going to give props to Kickstarter, but I say bring on the competition.
So it'd be interesting to see the direction GameFound goes in and to see how actually it provides a good platform. And it is good to see some competition. You're right, it drives down price and it creates and actually forces innovation and for other companies to come up with new concepts, new ways that can make the platform better for the customer. So we'll see how that goes. And I'm sure at the moment it's been quite successful. So we'll see what direction it goes in the future.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
let's move on to number 4.
Okay, number 4.
So, okay, oh, this is so over the last years, what new beliefs, behaviors, or habit has improved your creative skills in board game design?
Over the last how many years?
3 years, over the last 3 years.
3 years. Okay, well, 3 years is essentially analogous to the design window of the Vrahode game system. It really was something that started to be realized in a very earnest way 3 years ago. Um, so what changed in order for me to do that? I got sober. That's one thing. So getting rid of alcohol from my life and becoming a sober, responsible guy was a big part of being able to realize that. Because before, when I would enjoy alcohol, um, it would make me lazy and procrastinate. I will say that the single catalyst to creating the Vrahode game system 3 years ago was the Harbinger 3D terrain system. So I felt like that was the main thing I wanted to bring to the board game industry, was this idea that you could purchase a game or a game series and actually have it include a fully functional yet affordable 3D terrain system that would allow you to build up to 5 level deep dungeons right on your tabletop. And so that design process that started 3 years ago with the Harbinger, it had to go through a lot of iterations. And I had to go through 10 different companies before I found one that even understood what my goal was or that there was any value to it. And I ultimately ended up with Limelight Miniatures in London and their engineer that they have on their team. And they finally, and they didn't get it on the first try, but they did try. and they kept trying until they understood it. Um, but I think it would be too lengthy on that part of the answer. The main thing that's changed to make me a better in the creative process of designing games, I think has to come down to this idea of understanding as a designer. And this is my second game design that I've created, is really what are my goals for game design. And a lot of designers, they start with a very, very powerful, simple mechanic, and they build their game around that mechanic. Some people start with theme. Some people start with uh, a franchise that's already been created, and they try to develop a game from a franchise. For me, what I've recognized in this process, what works for me, what I enjoy most, is that I start with story. I start with world. And the world or story is my kind of Christmas tree, if you will. And then I hang rules onto that Christmas tree that complement the story and the way I see that story or that kind of novel play out for gamers. And so I come at game design with rules last, where the story is the main focus for me for a game. And I know that's kind of backwards. Most designers are like, oh, that's not at all the way I do it. But that's how I enjoy it the most. I want a powerful, compelling story, and I have to figure out how to apply the rules to it conservatively. I never want to be like Isaac Childress. I never want to create a game that's that heavy. I want to create a game that has this wonderful story that takes players along with as few and as light a rules as can be applied through those kind of Christmas tree ornaments that are hung on the story. And so that's how my creative process works.
And the beauty about board game design is there's no hard rules. You can design it any way you like, and the
Right.
process any way you like. And that's the beauty about it. It's a creative art. So thank you so much for sharing that, Jeff. And I'm sure that'll hit a note with a few people. So we'll move on to question number 5.
The halfway point.
We are. Rather than fluffy questions yet. You never know.
I just hope we don't see an iceberg off the starboard bow or something.
So, what do you like most about the board game industry? So that's quite a bit of a fluffy one.
It is a little fluffy, but and I can answer this honestly, and hopefully I don't tear up. But I can tell you that without a doubt, and I have worked in several industries, there is no industry that is kinder, that is more welcoming, that has this attitude of camaraderie. And I mean, I came into this industry as a complete outsider, and I reached out to Creative Game Studios, which is a lovely company out of Brazil. I reached out to Rick Bach and Marcio Assis. Uh, these are the guys that created Chronicles of Drunagor. Their current project is Dante, The Invasion of Hell. And these guys were kind and encouraging and patient. In fact, he lives in, where does he live? Bozeman, Montana. I'm in Whitefish, Montana. He lives in Bozeman. But he was driving up to see a friend in Eureka, Montana, which is right up by the Canadian border. And lo and behold, he calls me and says, hey, I've got a copy of Chronicles of Drunagor for you. He dropped me off a complete copy of Chronicles of Drunagor so that I could play their game on his way. And I have to say, almost every experience that I've had in this industry has been like that. I'm talking about Mesa Game Labs and David Diaz. I'm talking Next Level Web and Andrew Lowen and Sean Bradford. I'm talking about Hexy Studios in Poland. I'm talking about Ori Kagan, who's a video producer like David Diaz is. Limelight Miniatures. There's so many companies and names that I could name. Jamie Jolly with Shadowborn Games. I mean, he invited me to come work his booth with him at Gen Con last year. And so I was able to work booth 1851 in support of Oathsworn with Jamie. And it was so fun to be part of an intellectual property that was so red hot, with popularity. But everyone has this idea that we can all win together, the rising tide lifts all boats kind of approach. And I'm humbled by it. And it makes me know that whether my games are successful and Weathervane Games is a profitable endeavor, I found the industry that I thought I would love, and I do. I love it.
Yeah, it's still a small industry compared to others. It's still growing. How big it grows, we
Yes.
don't know yet. We'll have to wait and see. But you're right. There's a lot what we call, well, certainly what I call a lot of radiators, warm, friendly, opening people who don't judge and want just the best out of other people, because nobody wants to see bad games. They want to see success and good games out there, and they want to play get good games. So there's a lot of positivity in trying to help people to make sure we can get some good games out onto people's shelves. So thanks so much for sharing that. I'm sure there's lots of great stories that others have got, and it'd be great to hear people if they can leave maybe a comment down below about perhaps they've got a story they can share of perhaps some good nature in the board game industry. It'd be great to hear others. So thanks so
Yeah, and yeah, even for fans, I would love to just hear from people that are fans that buy games and play games in how they feel. I'd love to hear their comments about how they feel when they come to they go to these game companies. I just have always felt like everyone's ready to just embrace you, and so I would love to see the comments from that. Yeah.
fantastic. So on to question number 6.
Number 6.
Put that one back. Okay,
Give me a fluffy one.
what's the one you feel you spend way too much time on?
Okay, read that again because you cut out for just a second.
So what is the task that you spend way too much time on? So if you think about your game design journey you went on,
Yes, I can tell you what it is. Okay, well, one of the things I will admit to you, Jay, is that I am a perfectionist. And I hire artists from around the world. I hire character artists, creature artists, landscape artists, card artists, graphic designers, cartographers. And one of the things that I demand from the visual aspects of my products is perfection. And so I end up spending way, way too much time in Photoshop editing what artists have already done so that that art ends up in the end having a cohesive and very, very kind of precise feel. And when I probably should just trust the artists, publish the art in the game and be done with it, I just can't. I have to do because I'm a graphic designer by trade. And so I have to get the art from, let's say, Guilherme Holes of Brazil, who's one of our card artists. He works quick and loose. I can't do quick and loose. So I take his beautiful art that he gives me, I tighten it, I lay a filter over it. I work with the color balances. I'll brighten, I'll darken. And then that goes into a frame that goes in with the text. And I probably spend as much time on his artwork as he does. So that is definitely something I pray that I can kind of lighten up on as I work into other game designs. But Vrahode, in many senses, is kind of my magnum opus. The story has been with me for over 30 years, and I only get one shot at this one. And so I feel like it's worth that extra time I put in to have it feel just as polished as it can.
yeah, perhaps there's opportunity for future games to listen up in that area. So,
Yeah.
so yeah, let's move on to our next question, number 7.
Okay. Number 7.
So, is the board game industry too crowded with the number of games released each year?
Yes, I suggest that all other companies take 2 years off and allow us to release ours. So, yes, absolutely, it's too crowded. Everybody just take a 2 year sabbatical, allow Weathervane Games to release Vrahode, and then get back to work. No, I think I think it's crowded for the right reasons. I think it's crowded because of Kickstarter. It's crowded because of GameFound. It's crowded with independent studios with mostly kind of edgy, um, risky, innovative titles. And if you look back, not so long ago, the game industry was so narrowly focused on powerful franchises like Star Wars and Lord of the Rings and Magic the Gathering. It was just very, very focused in these areas. And when the floodgates of crowdfunding opened, it allowed, I think, this is just my opinion, it allowed the game industry to be more indicative of the diversity of its clientele. It allowed us to, for the first time, be able to create a product about lesbian romance that never could have existed before, or to be able to have a product that is about a brand new concept, say gardening. You know what I mean? It's so much more indicative of the diversity of our population of gamers. Um, and I think what that tells me is there aren't too many games. There's the right amount of games. You know, companies that aren't making good products, that aren't financed, they don't know how to manage their finances. They don't play nice with other companies. They're going to be gone, right? There will be attrition. There will be Darwinism within the gaming industry. And I think that is, again, if I'm going to be a capitalist, I have to be true and honor that there will be attrition for the ones that aren't making the grade. You agree with that, Jay?
Yeah, I think we've seen a lot of companies fold because you
Yeah,
could argue that they haven't been managed the way they should have been managed, but there's also a lot of competition, and that can drive, the well-run companies, and then obviously bring down the companies that aren't running so well. There's various different reasons why that is. Like anything, when someone gets big and becomes bigger and bigger, there is a point in any industry that eventually there's a bubble that bursts and companies do fold as a result. That naturally happens in any business. But you're right in the sense that there's so much choice out there for the customer to choose the type of game that they want, which is fantastic, but it can also be very overwhelming for somebody new in the
sure.
industry. But the more choice there is can be a good thing. But there is a danger and a risk to that as well. But we'll see how that plays out in the future, and we'll see how companies grow. There may be less smaller companies because bigger companies are swallowing them up, and that's naturally what happens in business. And I'm sure that'll happen more and more in the board game industry. But we'll see what happens in the future. And no doubt, I think there'll be smaller companies in the future because I can see the bigger ones swallowing them up, and that's just naturally what.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah, agreed.
we will see. Okay, let's move on to question 8.
Number 8.
There you go. Right. Okay. So, do you think more board games in the future will start to be manufactured in Europe and the US? So, at the moment, a lot of games are manufactured in China. Do you think we'll see more and more be manufactured in the US and then Europe?
I think it's going to have a lot to do mostly with the kind of the geopolitical landscape of the world. I think China has established themselves over a long period of time for affordability and efficiency in manufacturing. The U.S. They sold out their manufacturing sector long ago. I can't speak to Europe. I'll just say this. Would I love to see the ability to competitively manufacture games in the US or Europe? Absolutely. Do I see that as anything that is imminently possible or practical? Absolutely not. I definitely don't. I think China is their practices and principles, which granted are probably environmentally questionable. I think they do things as cheaply and quickly as they can, which in this industry that's kind of a necessity. There's not much margin in board game creation, and so you're forced to seek out efficiency and affordability for the manufacturing costs of your product. China is the only game in town in order to do that. However, I will say this, and I don't think it's a good thing, but I see the board game industry um, kicking and screaming in beginning to use more AI created artwork. And I see them doing that in an effort to save money. You know, I've spent hundreds of thousands on this product, this game series, most of it with artists and writers, human creators. I've made the commitment with my company to never use AI created artwork. But when I look at the costs of it, I will not be able to compete with companies that choose to. If companies choose to switch over to AI created artwork, then it does open the possibility of your European and American manufacturing bases. If you can take that entire cost of a game out of the equation, then you can afford maybe to spend a little bit more in these countries to manufacture your product.
Yeah, certainly, a topic certainly we could spend hours discussing, isn't it? And I know Man versus Meeple held a discussion on the use of AI and
Yeah.
risks that would bring for artists. But that's likely something we will be covering in more detail in another video where we cover the top 6 future aspects of the board game industry. So we'll put the link in the description here below for that. Because there's certainly a topic we can certainly see some changes in the future and say that impacts on artists. There should be more and more discussions around this in the future. So we'll move on to question number 9, Jeff. So
Number nine, number
question.
nine, number nine, number nine. That's Beatles. Sorry. That's a Beatles reference. Sorry.
So, what's the first app on your phone you open when you wake up?
Oh my goodness. Let's see. It's going to be probably Gmail. I get so many emails right now being so thick in the weeds on game development that a lot of my European partners are emailing me through the night or through the morning while I'm sleeping. And so I hit my Gmail first, Gmail app, then I'm going to Facebook and looking for lighter things, but definitely Gmail just to see who from Europe, like for example, Tabletone, they're in Austria, which is I think +7, +8 from me, um, time zone wise. So yeah, got to stay on top of the emails.
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of other developers, designers, and content creators get quite a few emails they need to keep on top of.
Yeah,
So move on to a final question.
make it a fluffy one.
I think this one's a fluffy one, but let's see. Well, actually, it is. Yes. So,
Okay.
well, kind of. The
Okay.
wackiest thing you have ever done, both in your personal life and in the board game industry.
The wackiest
Yeah,
that I've done both in my personal life and in the board game industry.
correct.
Wow. So it's got to give kind of two answers.
That's right, yeah. Or if you feel comfortable, just give one. Let's what's the wackiest, the craziest thing you've ever done?
The wackiest or craziest thing I've ever done. Wow, that's hard. Wackiest or craziest thing I've ever done. I mean, I don't think most people would consider going skydiving wacky. I mean, they would. There's a lot of people that skydive, and they're like, "Oh, that's nothing. You just jump out of a plane." For me, it was wacky.
Well, yeah,
You
I'm sure
know?
a few people have a heart attack doing that. So
Yeah. Well, I did it indoors. I didn't jump out of a plane. I got into a silo full of wind and did indoor skydiving. So even less wacky than jumping out of a plane.
you cheated.
I cheated. I cheated. But man, that's a question I could probably give you with time. I would be like, oh yeah, well there's that, and oh, and then there's that. I mean, I've done a lot of wacky things. I'm 55 years old, so you can imagine in 55 years on this earth that I've probably racked up some pretty wacky stuff.
So
Uh,
what would your wife say then? So what would your wife say is the craziest thing you've ever done?
I spent $4,000 on a computer for a single game that I ended up not even buying. I mean, that's kind of wacky.
Were you sleeping in the
I
couch?
I, I wanted to play Star Citizen, which was a simulator, and so I bought this big high end PC gaming rig for the game Star Citizen, only to find out that the game was just going to continue to be updated and never really be finished. And so I ended up giving this ultra high end, expensive computer rig to one of my daughters.
Oh, happy.
The thing that's funny is I just did it again. I just did it again. I bought a high end gaming computer because since Star Citizen didn't work out for me, my reward for finishing the Vrahode game system is going to be to play Starfield by Bethesda. It's a space simulator. Uh, Bethesda is the company that released Skyrim and Fallout, so a very big name in computer software. But Starfield comes out September 6th, and so I ordered a brand new computer to play that.
Let's hope you get more use out of that one.
I hope. I hope.
Well, that brings us to the end, Jeff. And I'd just like to thank the viewers for watching and thank our guest, Jeff, for joining us. And if you haven't already done so, please consider subscribing to the channel and giving this video a like. And also leave a comment down below. Any particular highlights of today's show that you enjoy, please let us know. And perhaps there's some questions you would like us to ask our guests in the future. Whatever it is, please leave a comment down below. Well, that's it from now. Until next time, take care.